just watching right now. This is going to be another type of difference of two squares. I'm going to first show you what happens when I multiply this, and then we'll work backwards to factor. So here, 2x times 2x, notice it's the same thing, but it's not just x times x. There's a number with it. So 2 times 2 is 4, x times x, x squared. 2x times negative 3, negative 6x. Positive 3 times 2x, positive 6x. Positive 3 times negative 3, negative 9. These two add up to 0, so I end up with 4x squared minus 9. So if I was going backwards to factor this, I still would do like you did with the difference of two squares, but before you only had to look at this number, now you have to look at this one also. So I'm still going to say, well, what? It has to be the same number in both spots. So the square root of 4, 2. So I have to put that 2 with the x. The 9, square root of that is 3, positive and negative, so that they'll cancel out. So you're going to practice on your boards those three. Looking at both numbers, so you're looking at basically the square root of those, and you have to do the plus and the minus.
Is this what we've been doing?
This is difference of two squares, but now there's a number here. Just like in the bell work, number 4 and 5. You know how you did that? But now you're going to have to put the square root of this number also with your x.
Yes, so
You see two terms that you're like, oh, that's a perfect square. I know that that has a square root, like a 4. This is a perfect square. Square root of that is 9. That's how you want to do those difference of two squares. But this has to be minus. Everybody listening, not writing? This has to be minus in order to do that. You can't do that unless that's a minus, because otherwise you won't get your 0 in the middle. Okay, so now put your lids on your markers. We're going to use them again, but I need you to just focus, because we're doing now the most challenging type of factoring there is. It's not too bad, but it's a long process, and if you miss part of it, then you're going to be like asking me a million questions, and I'm going to be mad at it, because I'll say, Alex, why weren't you listening in the first place? Then you wouldn't ask me these questions. So this is factoring by grouping, and in a little bit you'll write some notes, but not yet. And sometimes when I'm teaching a process, even like when I'm teaching people how to play a card game or something, I feel like it's better to start in the middle. Like there's a part A of how you play, and then after you do that, there's a part B. Sometimes I teach part B before part A because it seems to make more sense. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to teach you the second part of the process, then we'll go back and I'll teach the first part. So the second part is where you would have 4 different terms. And you guys have actually done this a little. Some of you have done this at the wrong time. You took a group of your whole expression. Some of you took like, well, I could take just an x out of these guys and leave this one without. That's kind of the whole idea. But what we're going to do with those 4 terms, there's going to be a whole lot of words here, just ignore them. I'll tell you what it. So here's our 4 terms. We're going to split them up into 2 groups right in the middle there. Sorry, is that totally in your way? No. I can move it for now because I don't need to write over there yet. And then we're going to look, what's the greatest common factor of these two? X squared. So that leaves me with x plus what's left here. There's nothing left that you can see, but remember there's always that invisible 1, x plus 1. So that if I distributed that, I'd still get my x squared. What's the greatest common factor here? 2. Leaving me with x plus 1. Because 2 is 2 times 1. Notice they have an x plus 1 in common. So now as I look at that whole thing, I should have put a plus there because that was a positive 2 that I took out. As I look at the whole thing, now I can factor out the x plus 1. And then look at what's left. Here I have an x squared. Here I have a plus 2. Now I've got it all factored. Any questions? You're going to try the next one on your board.
Oh, no. I'm just saying, if we got
We can
It's
kind
not
of
numbers this time.
work through it together. So there's, all right. So write that down first on your board. X- 6x to the third minus 9x squared plus 4x minus 6. What do you think we need to do first?
Take out an X.
Yeah, so first we just want to find our two groups, first two terms, second two terms. Now, what can I take out of the first two terms? 3x. There's not x to the third here, so I
You can take it.
only take x squared out. What's left from the 6x?
2x.
No, it's just 2X.
Yep, what's left from the 9x squared?
3.
Good. Now factor this one. Pull out what you can there. 2.
Minus.
So, it's
You are not now.
Joy beach.
these.
Yes.
Wait, that's not what we have to do.
Good job.
Can you
Good job. Okay, so good. So you guys pulled out a 2 from this. Remember, it's a positive 2. Put that plus with it. And that left you with 2x minus 3. And then some of you notice, oh, look, there's a common factor there. 2x minus 3 can now be pulled out of both of those groups. And then I'm left with 3x squared plus 2. Notice there's nothing in between here because I'm multiplying these. I just took that 2x to the third out of, it's like factoring out a common factor. So it's,
the same thing and then you make the front pieces of things.
yeah, so these two were the ones they had in common, so I pulled that out. And then this, what was left from the first one, went here. This one was left from the second part, went here. Okay? Let's try another one. Erase that.
Especially on there.
Yeah, I got this.
Here's your second one. Can you see it? X to the third plus x squared plus x plus 1. Good. So you guys did that one great. There's one more of these. Okay, here's your next one. 8x to the third
What happened to my rack?
plus 2x squared plus 12x plus 3. Well, we're not done.
Oh, no, it's not here. You always bump it up a level and then I'm lost. Let's not.
So I'm going to do it up here, even though you all got it, for the sake of the people on the video. So greatest common factor was 2x squared, which left me with 4x plus 1. Here, I could take out a positive 3, and that left me with 4x plus 1. Now these are in common. I'm going to pull those out, 4x plus 1. And then what's left is 2x squared plus 3. And we're done. Okay, so now open your notebooks to the next clean page. You're going to copy some stuff and then we're going to talk about it. This is the title of your page, Factoring by Grouping, and you can write that also in your table of contents.
I'm on page 5.
So copy all of that.
Today's the 7th or 6th?
So what you just did was step F.
No.
Factoring by
Wait. You tricked us by making us do the last part.
It's not that bad, honestly. You just did the biggest chunk of it. The other steps are pretty simple. It's just that there's a lot of steps, but they're not hard. The first thing you do is find your A, B, and C, which remember A is the coefficient of the x squared, B the coefficient of the x, C is the coefficient of that doesn't have an x. So step A, and copy this down please. We would say A equals 3, B equals -2, C equals -5. That was easy. Always be careful, sometimes they put these out of order, like they'll put maybe plus 3x squared on the end. Sometimes you have to rearrange those, so be careful about that. I'm gonna just rewrite this up here. 3x squared minus 2x minus 5. So then step B is multiply A times C. That is 3 times 5. Actually 3 times -5. -15. That was simple. So you wouldn't have to always write out every little step like this. So when you're doing the problem, you might just want to say, okay, zoom, 3 times 5, -15. Step C, find the factor pairs of that. So what times what would give me 15?
3 and 5.
3 and 5, or 1 and 15. There we go. We're already up to step D. Which ones could I get a -2 with by adding or subtracting? The 3 and 5. And then I have to decide, since I'm multiplying to a negative, I'll have one positive, one negative. Which one do I want positive in order to get a negative to get a -2 when I add? Plus 3 minus 5, because on my number line, if I think about it, I want to go all the way out to -5 and then come back 1, 2, 3 to end up at -2. You want to go farther negative in order to end up negative. So your bigger number has to be the -5. Done with step D, step E. This was the one that some people find a little confusing, but it's not bad. So all I'm going to do now, I'm going to rewrite my original equation. I'm going to keep 3x squared just as it is, 3x squared. This middle term, -2x, I'm going to write it as plus 3x minus 5x. Plus 3x minus 5x. And then I've got the -5 on the end. So it's like these would be combined like terms to give us the -2x. We just separated them out because now I have 4 terms and I can factor by grouping. So step F, factor that by grouping. So what could I take out of the first two? 3x. Which leaves me with x plus 1. Notice this is a minus 5x. If you have a minus over here, you have to take out a negative from this. So I'm going to take out a negative 5. Minus 5 comes out. And that leaves me with an x. If I already took out a negative, what's this going to become? Positive 1. Now I have an x plus 1 and an x plus 1. Pull out. That leaves me with 3x minus 5. And we're done. That's the factored form.
So do we only do those when our whole number can't go into the x?
Good question. So when in the world do we do this? We do this anytime that leading coefficient is not a 1. So if you have a number besides 1 with the x squared, you have to do that. You can't just say, what multiplies 5 adds up to 2? Because this throws everything off because we have this 3 here that if I'm distributing and multiplying, it throws that whole thing off.
We could do 2 normally, right? But like 2 we did normally, right?
So you only do this?
That was because you could factor the 2 out first. So that, if they all have a whenever you see a number here with the x squared, first thing to check, is their greatest common factor? But 3 doesn't go into everything, so I couldn't pull it out. So you always want to check that first, because that's a lot easier if you have a common factor to pull out. But if there's no common factor, you're stuck with this long method. Okay, on your boards or notebook, if you prefer to have it in your notes, so I'll give you a couple more practice problems. There's no new homework tonight, so just gonna practice this. Here's your second one. I'm gonna leave my example up here. Here's 2n squared plus 3n minus 9. See if you can do it.
Sure. Yeah.
No, you can't, Alex, actually.
All right, good. So those who are done that one, I want you to do one more.
Miss Anthony, can you come?
I will. Okay, here's your last one. 3n squared minus 8n plus 4.
I think I did this.
So, first step we would do are A, B, and C. 3 is A, B is negative 8, C is 4. Then we're going to multiply A times C. 3 times 4 equals 12. That was step B. Step C, we're going to find the factors of 12. What multiplies times itself? What numbers can I multiply to get 12? 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Then I want to find the two, not quite, but you're close.
Close.
So, do you have a second?
Sure.
Okay. So then I want to find the two that add or subtract to that negative 8. I could get a negative 8 with a 2 and with a 6. I'm going to have to make them both negatives to add up to a negative 8. So here's where it's tricky. I'm going to bring down the 3n squared. That doesn't change. I'm going to bring down the plus 4. That doesn't change. But in the middle, that minus 8n, I'm going to write it as minus 2n minus 6n. It's an awkward way of saying minus 8. It's negative 2 minus 6. But we have to do that to be able to solve these. Now factor by grouping. What do these have in common? N. Which leaves me with 3n minus 2. What do these have in common? Negative 2. If this is a minus, I have to pull out the negative. Negative 2. That leaves me with 3n minus 2. Because a negative times a negative would give me that positive. This 3n minus 2 I pull out. Then I'm left with n minus 2.